And there we go. Nico, we are back on a Friday morning again, and you're here kind of on a train today. How are you doing today, Nico?
Yes, I'm doing good on the train to my hometown Aachen, and I just realized that we have several constants we're dealing with, Pierre. One of those is I'm always facing internet issues, right? So fingers
Yes.
crossed it will all work out. Besides, having great topics and speaking about a very interesting industry. How are you today, Pierre?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, thank you. I mean, under the circumstances, I suppose it was a weird day yesterday, wasn't it? Like, it was weird to go through Thursday, waking up in the morning and reading the news. What was your feeling when you woke up? Like,
In the end, it just feels wrong, to be honest, right? And if we just, as you already mentioned yesterday, we just know wars besides the war in Kosovo and the Iraq war. We've never faced a war inside Europe, right? During the time span we've been living, the last big war was World War II, and just fingers crossed nothing like this will ever happen again. So all the best to all the diplomats for just solving this war zone, and this is nothing anyone should ever face again in their lifetime.
yeah, it's I think many of us have friends at this stage who live in Kiev, and it was weird to speak to them yesterday because some of the friends that I spoke to were in kind of full panic mode yesterday, which was really sad. They didn't know what to do, even though it felt like this was, in hindsight, it felt like it was. Why couldn't we understand that this was going to happen before? But I think people just couldn't imagine that it would actually happen, that the country would actually be invaded. And now we've seen during the night that there's been bombings in Kiev. I have some friends who posted as well that they can kind of see the rockets exploding and stuff like that. It's pretty grim. And obviously, from an iGaming perspective, we have many of our industry friends and colleagues situated in Ukraine at the moment. Paramatch being probably the largest kind of purebred Ukrainian iGaming company. And of course, thoughts goes out to all of our industry colleagues and friends who are still within Ukraine at the moment the- with just hoping that they'll be able to stay safe through all of this time. So yes, and in addition to Paramatch, obviously a lot of other iGaming organizations who have their offices there as well. And again, speaking to many of the organizations yesterday, are trying to do the best they can to help their staff and to make sure that people are as safe as they can be. Obviously, the offices are not active in Ukraine at the moment. A large part of the workforce who are situated in Ukraine are not able to work. And imagine the economic downfall it will have on Ukraine, in the sense that all the like Ukraine and specifically Kiev is very much a tech hub at this stage, and all of these organizations from overnight are not able to produce any work, right? So even us, we have Ukrainian developers who are developing our new website, for example, and they kindly messaged yesterday that they were trying to upload the work that they have done, but the internet was too unstable, and they were just about to evacuate. So entire companies and organizations just stop overnight, essentially. So from that perspective as well, the economic downfall on Ukraine will be quite significant, presumably, if this conflict extends as well. Not a great situation over there, of course, but hopefully everyone will be safe. Yeah. I don't know if you have any people that you know in the area as well, Nico.
Unfortunately, I don't know people besides the Perimatch contacts we have, but
Yes.
we've been facing a similar issue because Turkish people are working for us, and while this attack in Istanbul, this was pretty pretty much the same, although this had been solved within 24 hours. Those people actually were, right? And this was, I couldn't imagine that something like this would and could ever happen during our times when people probably tend to, solve this things prior attacking someone. And yeah, fingers crossed to each and everyone being directly or indirectly, affected by this attack. Things will get solved very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, we're not going to talk Ukraine the entire weekly news podcast here, but I think just as a final remark here, it's a very stark reminder that the safe world that we are raised in is not necessarily the status quo forever. It's not going to be like this forever. We have to take care of this world that we have, and it is a very fragile world that we live in with very complex conflicts. And conflicts that are boiling under the surface, so to say, and at any time this status quo can change. And so, we were speaking about yesterday. It was Robin Reed, one of our shareholders, Robin Eric Reed's birthday, and it was a weird day to wish someone a happy birthday. But Robin, he said, I'm gonna take that message that he sent back, because it was a quite interesting remark that he made. He said it's strange that humans are working on going to Mars and creating parallel universes, and then we are fighting at the one globe and universe we currently have. But I am lucky to be part of the first part of that paragraph, and are loving every minute of it. He said, so he is focused on these bigger things rather than these comparably insignificant conflicts in comparison to what we can achieve if we all come together. So that's my little message, I suppose. And good morning as well to Peter Straffer, who's mentioning that he has a lot of friends in Ukraine, and one nearly died even, which is of course extremely tragic. So yeah, something that is a true wake-up call for all of us to not take what we have for granted. Absolutely. But Nico, putting that aside, of course, in the iGaming industry this week, as always, there's been quite a turbulent week, so to say. We are at the end of the reporting season at the moment, with a lot of interesting quarterly reports that have been published here in the last week. DraftKings, of course, with their always roller coaster announcement that came last Friday. And in addition to that, we'll also have this week two really interesting reports, in my opinion, which is Better Collective and Catena Media. The affiliate front has been, a lot of people, including myself, have been really excited to see the results of the Q4 report for Better Collective and Catena Media, because obviously in the United States at the moment things are heating up, and I was particularly interested to read the guidance of Q1. So not exactly the result of Q4, but I was really curious to see what Better Collective and Catena Media would give us guidance for Q1, because obviously New York went live in January, and 4% of the entire state signed up with a sports betting account. And so the expectations and the curiosity around this was how would this affect the numbers of Better Collective and Catena Media, who are two very active affiliates in the United States, and New York obviously was an important launch to them. So I was very curious to see those two reports specifically coming out this week. And if you don't mind, we can dive into those two reports in a little bit right now. Nico, what do you say? Shall we start on that front?
Let's do it. Yes, let us start. One side note from my end. I was trying to get Carl Pug, who is the M&A director and vice president of new business development. Unfortunately, he's on vacation in New York as of now, but I'm pretty sure he will join us at a later stage, maybe next week or the week after next week, to just discuss the overall affiliate space, which is moving, not just by Better Collective and Catena Media, but we also have an M&A we could talk about, put a little bit of a a question out there, but I will just mute myself now as we have an announcement on the
All right.
train.
All right, brilliant. And Andreas Radars is publishing a link here as well, where you can see live webcams in Ukraine, in Kiev at the moment. And I haven't watched those myself. There is another Reddit thread where you can follow the news kind of live as they happen, kind of like an aggregate of news, um, where you can see live updates from that are curated by the Reddit admins. I will see if I can publish that link as well at some point during this book, because it's a very good source for aggregate updates in real time, if for those who would like to follow what's going on in Ukraine at the moment. Also, Bogdan, nice to have you with us here. Bogdan is mentioning that he was personally disgusted with yesterday's tweet from the UEFA Europa League when they wish everyone a happy Thursday in capital letters with a celebration emoji. I suppose this is a pre-scheduled tweet that came at a very unfortunate timing. And I saw there were other celebrities who also put. There was like another viral tweet that went live yesterday as well from The Weeknd, the performers duo, which also had a similar message as well, that were kind of pre-scheduled. And these timings, of course, are not the best. In light of the football perspective, I saw that the Champions League final has been rescheduled from Russia as well. I can't remember exactly. I don't know if they have announced where it's going to move to, but it's going to be moved. And in addition to that, I mean, I also spoke to a friend of mine who have his company domiciled in Russia with bank accounts in Russia. All bank accounts are now under sanctions. They are not able to move money in and out of Russia anymore, and that likely is going to mean the end of his company to that extent. The sanctions that are now being imposed are heavily going to affect, obviously, the companies that are domiciled in Russia, and we'll have to wait and see what the outcome will be from those sanctions as well, because as we know, within the iGaming industry, a lot of some of the major organizations also are domiciled in Russia, and they have offices in Russia, staff in Russia, and so on. So we'll have to follow from that perspective as well. Nonetheless, for now, let's move into, again, Better Collective and Catena Media here. Two very interesting quarterly reports that were published on Wednesday and Thursday. Two interesting companies here, because if we look at the EBITDA results of the year, Nico, actually Catena Media is outperforming Better Collective on the EBITDA front for 2021, with Catena Media making 68.8 million euro EBITDA of the year, while Better Collective makes 58.8 million euro of the year. But if we look at the share prices, and I'm going to see if I can bring them up here right now, we can see that Better Collective, they have a market cap that is more than double than Catena Media, even though Catena Media is making a larger EBITDA result of the year. And the reason for that is the growth of Better Collective. And so if we look at the last quarter rather than the year, we can see that it's Better Collective that is outperforming Catena Media now in EBITDA. It hasn't been like that for very long. I think they have done this now for the last 2 quarters, where they are outperforming Catena Media. And in the last quarter, Better Collective made 16.3 million euro EBITDA versus Catena Media's 12.8. So a couple of million more EBITDA on the side of Better Collective. Now, where it gets interesting in the comparison between these two affiliates is in my opinion, again, not so much in the Q4 numbers, but the guidance in Q1. Like, what are we expecting to happen in Q1? And Better Collective are expecting that their revenue will double in January comparison to January last year, whereas Catena Media are expecting the revenue to increase with 29% revenue growth comparison to last year. And so you can see the revenue growth trajectory of Better Collective, especially on the US side of the pond, is exponential. Right? Better Collective is far outperforming Catena Media in the US at the moment. We can also look at the fact that, for example, the Better Collective increased their revenue with 471% in the US in the last year, whereas Catena Media increased their US revenue by about 100%. Both companies makes now about 50% of the revenue from the United States, which then you can also start making the argument that, like, are they taking risks by focusing so heavily on one market, so to say, if you want to call the US one market. This is an issue which the Scandinavian operators obviously have traditionally faced with being too exposed to the Scandinavian markets traditionally, which puts them at the mercy of the regulators. Whenever there's a movement of a regulator, it can affect the entire business. Kindred is a great example of this now for the Netherlands, when they lost 35% of their EBITDA overnight when the Netherlands pulled out from the markets. And thanks as well to Andreas Rades, who is publishing the link here to the investor portal of the website of Better Collective, where you can find the quarterly reports. In the case, Better Collective have also announced a media partnership with the New York Post. I heard that they have an exclusive affiliate deal with Win, and Win obviously now going live in New York as well. So a lot of momentum behind Better Collective. However, it was a really weird report since it was published yesterday, with the markets obviously crashing yesterday. So it's really difficult to understand exactly what is the real reaction from the market on the report, because the markets was just crazy yesterday. But since they published the report, they have lost about 12% of the share price. Catena Media was they also had a negative reaction, and they are down 5.7% in this moment on the market since they published the quarterly reports. But again, it's so difficult to know exactly how the investors are reacting to the report rather than to the wider macroeconomics here, of course. But seemingly, in my opinion, I think Better Collective is just publishing a very, very, very strong report. And also, in my opinion, I think Catena Media's report, especially considering the acquisitions of i15 Media and Lineups, which are specifically like big acquisitions to increase the revenue in the United States, that they are still not able to perform that strongly when it comes to the revenue estimations in January. I was expecting January guidance to be off the chart for Catena Media specifically, and it seems that it's Better Collective now with their guidance that are outperforming Catena Media even further here. So the story again of the affiliate Q4 reports is very much what's going to happen in Q1. We have New York going live, we have Super Bowl, we have March Madness, and so we are expecting a very, very strong quarter here. I don't know, Nico, on your end, if there's any additional thoughts here on the affiliate front specifically.
Yes. So first of all, we are speaking about the two powerhouses of the affiliate world, right? So Catena Media and the Better any bigger, to be honest, right? It doesn't get any bigger on the affiliate side. And what we should always keep in mind is there are always rumors going around that is about to acquire Catena Media to become the one and only leading affiliate source. So this just gives the audience a little bit, or puts some things a little bit into perspective as well. First of all, I'm pretty sure that if we just have a look at how Better Collective positioned themselves within the US market, signing exclusive deals with Win, when the first 4 operators went live in the state of New York, they had signed up already 3. So as you mentioned, where the Q1 to 2022 report will give us even more insights about who is the leading affiliate. And I'm pretty sure that as of now, Better Collective is just taking the lead.
Absolutely, and you know, Andreas, thanks for joining us here, by the way, in our little cozy weekly chat here as well. Also worth mentioning here is that the rumors were that Catena Media was about to be acquired last year by Better Collective when. In the summer, the share price it had a dip in Catena Media. It went down to about 47 kroner at that time, before it bounced back up to about 65. However, at that time, when during this dip, the rumors were very much that this takeover bid by Better Collective was not approved by the Catena Media board, as they felt that the company would bounce back. But looking at the share price today, it's actually lower than what it was during that point in the summer. As I mentioned, when these rumors were flying around that Catena Media was about to be acquired, the share price of Catena Media was 47 kroner, and now we are down to 40 kroner, and it's actually decreased from about 57 to 40 here in the last 2 weeks. So Catena Media have lost about 30% of the share value here in the last 2 weeks. So potentially Catena Media could become an acquisition target again here now for Better Collective. And you never know. I mean, the Better Collective are operating with a lot of momentum. Their market cap is about twice that of Catena Media, so it's not an unlikely acquisition to make. And so it's absolutely something to look out for. So very interesting on that front for sure. Catena Media, Better Collective. It's great that they report the days after each other, because they are the kind of nemesis of each other to look out for here. So and it's really good to compare these two reports, because you can really see the performance of the two companies, like who is performing better than the other company, and that gives a really good indication of who is doing. Who is performing over expectations, so to say. So it's always great to compare these two companies. They're very similar to each other, similar markets, similar ambitions, and similar strategy. So very interesting on that front to look at for sure.
And on another short note, you know, we're doing this weekly wrap up for almost a year, and if we just remember, you know, by spring or beginning of summer last year, we already spoke about Better Collective restructuring their debts and freeing up money, right? And we of course asked ourselves, okay, they freed up at least 35, 40 million euros, right? How they will actually spend this money, right? First of all, of course, you can even get a bigger loan as soon as you have this 35, 40 million in your own pocket. So there will be acquisition targets, and as soon as the Catena Media price is looking good, I'm pretty sure they will just snap it. You know, the bigger fish than just bites a big portion of a little bit smaller fish. But it will be interesting to just follow up on this one.
Absolutely, it is, Nico, and also interesting comment here by Lars, who mentioned that this surprise move in Brazil to give the green light basically for this historical iGaming regulation bill came out yesterday as a bit of a surprise here as well, or 2 days ago rather. And we'll dive into that topic a little bit here today as well. We haven't really zoomed in on that, to be fair, but we absolutely can discuss this topic a little bit as well at a high level. And then Andreas is also asking, do you compare Better Collective with 888? Well, 888 is not exactly a pure affiliate, right? 888 is predominantly an operator, and so I think the comparison is not exactly as straightforward as it is between Catena Media and Better Collective per se, but it's 888 is one of those other companies that are also very dynamic and interesting to look at as well. One of those operators that are looking for a global foothold here, of course, as well. But not particularly a great comparison to Better Collective, in my opinion. I don't know, Nico, if that makes sense to you.
Thing is, first of all, there are two big companies, but 888, especially with the acquisition of William Hill just last year, right? So they just put themselves on another level, becoming a tier one operator by just this one acquisition. To put it a little bit into perspective, 888 is an operator. They are taking the risk of offering, games like sports betting, casino, slots, whatever, while Better Collective is providing the traffic towards these operations. So this is where those two companies actually distinguish themselves from each other. While, as said, Better Collective is handing over the traffic, which is served towards all the operators like 888, the William Hills belonging to Better Collective, the Typicals, the Bet365, you name them. So this is where these two companies, these two powerhouses actually distinguish themselves from each other.
Absolutely, Nico. Jumping over to next topic here, Nico. Is there anything on your agenda today that you'd like to jump over to?
So first of all, and if you don't mind, we can briefly talk about Brazil and what's happening in Brazil,
Yes.
as I already covered this topic within my weekly wrap-up last week. So what we see in Brazil is quite unique because they formed an alliance of, first of all, within the overall Senate of the actual leading party with the opposite party, and they agreed on, okay, we want to legalize gaming and betting in Brazil. And then they put it to a vote, and as expected, the majority voted for, okay, gaming to being regulated. So it actually happened like each and everybody was expecting it to do. But there's one guy, the president, Mr.
Yes.
Bolsonaro, sorry, and he already stated as soon as the rumor has been put into place that there will be a majority for gaming regulation, and he said, okay, under my umbrella, or as long as I'm the president of Brazil, there will be no gaming. So he will for sure vote against it. And then it might become a lawsuit where the overall veto might be taken away from a court. So we will just see if Mr. Bolsonaro will vote towards gaming being legalized or not. But I'm pretty sure this story ain't over yet. And something which is quite unique, they are it's election year, right, in Brazil, and we will just see how the president will position himself as a hardliner against gaming, or will he finally decide on legalizing gaming and coming up with an authority and a process how to actually legalize betting and gaming in particular in Brazil. That's just my 2 and 3 senses on a very, very high level.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's important to point out here that it's not like the regulation is now approved on all levels here, as you are saying, Nico. The next step now is that the bill will now pass to a plenary review process, where you can make amendments essentially to the bill before it passes on to the next legislative political level. And as you point out, the president Jair Bolsonaro has very vocally said that he will veto any regulation. And it has met other opposition politically as well, this potential bill here. So as you point out, Nico, it's definitely not set yet that we'll see iGaming finally passing in Brazil. It's a very slow moving process. It's been delayed several times. But at least we have some positive news here yesterday, and we can still have high hopes here for Brazil at some point becoming becoming a regulated market here. So fingers crossed for that, of course. I'm sure our friends over at Bitsong Group, for example, who are specializing in South America, are looking very closely at these news at the moment. They are very strong in Peru, as an example, Argentina, Mexico, and so on. And Betsson, I'm sure, would be one of those operators who are crossing all their fingers and toes at the moment in hopes of Brazil becoming a regulated market. But we'll also have, looking at the American operators, the likes of DraftKings, Caesars, and others. There is some discussions happening if Latin America is the next frontier for the American operators. The dust is sort of settling a little bit on the American side of the pond here, where there are plenty of sports betting being legalized in various states in the United States, and the expectation is that a large majority of the states will legalize sports betting. But it's a much bigger question mark on iGaming. So what they separate the terms iGaming from sports betting. So essentially, online gambling. There's only 5 states where online gambling is allowed currently in the United States, and the American culture is very much such that sports betting is seen as something mainstream, and it's kind of accepted culturally, in as opposed to online gambling, which is much more stigmatized. And regulators and politicians are much more hesitant to legalize online gambling. But on the other hand, that is where the revenue is for the operators. And so far, I would say that it's been a disappointment for the operators that so few states, since PASPA was repealed, have actually legalized online gambling. And so the discussions are now, could there be other frontiers to be looking at for online gambling revenue? And in that case, would Latin America be one such frontier? And so I expect that we'll keep an eye out for potential news coming from operators who might be keen to enter the Latin American market. What do you think, Nico? Is that a fair point as well? Do you think some of the American operators may jump over national lines into South America or any other place?
Yeah, first of all, we have Canada, the state of Ontario just around the corner, pretty close to New York. And Latin America, also for Aspire Global, is also a target. They're already very strong in South America. I just have to exit the train. Give me 5 minutes,
All
and
right.
I will be back.
I'll continue here. Yes, great stuff, Nico. I always love doing these chats with Nico here. So Nico is gonna exit his train, and he'll be joining us here in a little bit again. But in the meantime, we can jump over to another news story here, which I find really interesting, which is the Esports Entertainment Group, which reported here a couple of days ago as well. Esports Entertainment Group is an esport company, but they also are establishing themselves as an iGaming operator. So they made an acquisition, I think it was last year or potentially the year before, of BetHard, who were traditionally based here in Malta. And after the acquisition, the company got quite hyped, and the share price on the stock market shot through the roof. They did very well. But since that acquisition was announced, the share price have steadily dropped over the course of about a year now, and has actually dropped more than 93% on the stock market. And that was fueled by the fact that they published the quarterly results here a couple of days ago, and a really worrying balance sheet of only 1 million euro. So they essentially just have 1 million euro on the balance sheet, and that is in connection with a cash burn of 1 million. So they are expecting to be EBITDA positive by next year. And the problem is that they obviously have to raise a lot of money in order to continue operating, essentially. And upon the news of the weak finances, the share price dropped by nearly 50%. They also updated the guidance of previously they had given guidance to about 100 million dollar revenue in 2022, but they lowered the guidance now to about 75% of the original target, so $75 million. And so it's a quite worrying situation that Esports Entertainment Group is in at the moment. And again, they dropped 50%, or even 60% since the news came out here. So pretty worrying on that front as well, of course. And while we are on the news of quarterly reports, something else that was really interesting this week as well, which Andreas as well, this will also be interesting to make the comparison over to Flutter. But we had also Caesars reporting as well the other day. And specifically, we're going to look at the digital arm of Caesars here, because like DraftKings, which we're also going to jump into, Caesars actually made a bigger EBITDA loss, or rather a bigger net revenue loss than what DraftKings did in Q4. And so investors are looking at DraftKings and with suspicion when they see the huge net losses that DraftKings are making. But actually, Caesars made an even bigger net loss in Q4. And they have now communicated, the digital arm of Caesars, that starting from Q2, we will see a handbrake being pulled on the massive marketing expenses that Caesars is currently investing in the United States. And so while they made this massive loss in Q4, the loss was mounted to $340 million. So 340 million. That's more, just to give a comparison, the EBITDA loss they made in Q4 21, $340 million is more than the entire revenue they generated of the entire year, which is an absolutely crazy statistic, to be honest. And it just goes to show how aggressive Caesars is in acquiring customers. And in a very short space of time, they acquired 21% market share in the US. So you could say that they have been successful in gaining the market share, although it has been a very expensive venture to get to that point. And they are also expecting Q1 to break all the records when it comes to the net loss, so to say. And that makes sense because obviously New York has launched here, and Caesars have been criticized for the fact that they launched this $3,000 sign-up bonus, and in connection with the fact that New York has imposed a 51% tax on revenue. People have been wondering, how on earth are you going to make sense of this marketing spend when the margins are so razor thin in New York as they are already? And the CEO here of Caesars Digital, he defended this $3,000 sign-up bonus with the fact that he said that the customers you sign up in the first quarter, whenever a market launches, is worth about double the amount as the customers that you acquire after the first quarter. So he's saying that the customers that sign up in the first quarter are valued much more than the customers that sign up later. So he's saying that there is a method to the madness. That's what he is saying. But he's saying that the first quarter result that you'll be seeing will never be repeated in Caesars again. And from Q2 onwards, you'll see Caesars taking a much more sustainable approach to the growth in the North American market. So it's quite interesting here because investors are now starting to lose their patience in the United States. And that is what we are seeing as a result here, where Caesars are pulling the brakes because investors are not accepting these massive losses any longer. They want to see a path to profitability now after this amount of time with massive losses. And obviously DraftKings is a great example here where DraftKings share price have been falling significantly, even though they have been following the strategy that they have communicated. And as you guys point out here in the chat, Andreas, you mentioned that fast growth is very expensive, and that is exactly what DraftKings have communicated as well, is that they want to dominate the market. And in order to dominate the market, we have to invest heavily, especially when a market launches. It is expensive to enter new markets, but if you want to build a good market share, then that is the strategy to take. And now we have started to see some competitors that are kind of letting go of this strategy now in order to please the shareholders and to show that they can find profitability in the States, whereas DraftKings, for example, is still very much up in the air, according to many shareholders, if they are ever going to find that profitability. So it's an interesting perspective here on Caesars. Nico, what about on your side here? Like, what do you make of all of this in general?
Yes.
Like,
So what we see and what we always should keep in mind is that gaming customers, right, are very loyal once they signed up. You know, you have to do the KYC on your end, topping up your account. So first of all, user acquisition cost, of course, it's quite expensive, especially in the US. Handing out a bonus of 3,000 euros, which was a sign up and a deposit bonus, seems to be very awkward if you just compare it with traditional industries. In the end, and as already pointed out, if you gain a market share, and if I'm not mistaken, they started with a market share of in the lower double digit, like 12 or 13%, right? And if you gain 8 additional percent, it's a massive increase, right? It's nearly you nearly doubled your market share by just this one state of New York actually opening up. Always keep in mind, only 3 operators started with New York. With now we're talking about 6 operators. When they already pulled the plug, are about to sell their e-commerce business. Guess what? Because they want to invest their money big time in the UAE with the just to open up. So in the end, Caesars already they gave a comment that they want to break even in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe
Yes.
this also pleases the investors. Or as Karl Lagerfeld once said, you have to throw out money out of the window to open the door when it actually comes back. And as you mentioned, you know, the getting into the market in the US and, you know, getting a footstep, position yourself for sure ain't cheap. And if we just have a look at the DraftKings overall results, when their marketing spendings exceeded the revenues by at least 2.5, 3 times, this is the amount of money we're talking about, which you just need to have within your pockets. If you ain't got that money, you don't deserve being in the market, as the big players actually spend that amount of money. And that's the craziness, but also the beauty about the US in particular.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're going to try to find out a little bit more what the method to the madness is here in May, when we are organizing our iGaming Next New York event here 12th to 13th May. And I was really happy to see that you are coming as well to that, Nico, of course. And it'll be very interesting to me to understand better. And the interesting thing is we will have both European representatives from operators and also representatives from the American operators, and we are really curious to put them together in order to understand from a European perspective what they think are the path to profitability, and also from a US perspective, what do they expect now in terms of profitability as we go forward into the US. Moving over to DraftKings here, what DraftKings have communicated is that they want to be EBITDA positive by Q4 2023. But that is if the states are continuing to open in the path that is expected, and that is a very big if. And the question is what the Americans, what the legislators will do. I mean, DraftKings is very much at the mercy of the regulators here. And the question is as well, in these calculations that DraftKings have done, do they expect California to open, for example? Do they expect Florida to open, for example, in order to be EBITDA positive 2023? Because news from either of those two states will completely change the landscape, of course, especially California, which is one of the biggest economies in the world. If California would open, and all of a sudden the entire playing field in the United States changes, so it will be interesting to see there. But it's a very, very big if in DraftKings guidance to positive EBITDA contribution Q4 23. And when they launched the quarterly report here on Friday, the markets reacted very negatively. I think the share price fell something like 20% on the report, and it wasn't actually any surprises in the report. They met the results that they had set out to do. They beat their own guidance. Obviously, looking at the numbers, it looks quite grim. They made a $327 million net loss in Q4, and even more grim is the 1.5 billion with a big B net loss of 2021 in the full year. They have cash on hand, something like the cash balance is in excess of 2 billion. But considering how expensive Q1 will be, which I am really curious to see how Q1 numbers will look like for all the American operators, you would expect that cash burn is going to significantly increase here in Q1, of course. So how far does that 2 billion cash balance take you in this environment? And at the same time, when the share price is falling here of DraftKings, they have a market cap now. I'm going to look this up now as we are speaking. They have a market cap of around 10 billion, if I'm not mistaken, 10 billion USD. So no, they have a market cap of $9 billion. And it's going to be more and more difficult for DraftKings to pursue M&A, for example, with a lower market cap. It's going to be more difficult for them to raise money as well with a lower market cap. And so at some point, DraftKings will need to also take action, as Caesars is now doing, in order to find profitability at some point. The question is, can they keep up with this aggressive marketing spend? And if they change strategy, let's say in 2 quarters, if they would pull back on marketing spend, because of a worrying cash balance, for example, then the question is, how will the markets react to that? And so DraftKings is playing a very high risk, high reward game at the moment. But you know what, Nico? We're in the gambling industry, and I think we like a little bit volatility in our life, don't we?
Yeah, one thing I'd just like to add, and what really worried me was, first of all, I'm pretty sure they're expecting California either their own ballot or the other ballot backed by the Indian tribes will come through. So they're expecting California to open up by end of 2022 already. But what has happened in Florida? What has happened in Florida, right? When they were fighting this monopole of the Hard Rock casino tribe, and they didn't fall short in votes. They didn't fall short in votes. They just needed roughly 850,000 votes. They had about 1.3 million. They fell short in validating those signatures. And this is something which I don't get. To be honest, I just don't get it, right? If you know, okay, we have to validate these 1.3 million, at least to come up with 850,000 to open one of the big 4 states, which will help us becoming positive with the EBITDA. I don't know why you just don't put that much effort into validating these signatures. Sign up a service provider, make sure that these signatures will be validated. I just don't get it, to be honest. But it also really New York opening up, so maybe they just fell short with manpower, right? Positioning themselves with marketing campaigns, etc. It hasn't been easy to just gain the market share in New York. 25 million on the line with just signing up for the license. But there you see even multi-billion-dollar companies then just fall short with one specific process, and this was validating the signatures in Florida to just open up the market in Florida. So it's quite an interesting story. And what is also interesting, if we already touched down on the US and what's so specific in the US, right? If you just compare it to other regulators, right? They come up with, okay, we want to open up market XYZ, the Dutch market, the market in Germany. In the US, and what's very, very specific, especially in New York, they will open up and hand out casino licenses for the downstate of New York as well. You know, they just put it up for vote. So you can apply with an application. It says applying for a job where you just come up with okay, me as the operator, I want to open up a casino resort and downstate of New York, which also includes New York City. And this is my tax rate I want to hand over to the tax of New York. So this is the madness which we are facing in the US, where you as the applicant will convince, not just by showing them, okay, these are the processes, this is how we deal with addictions, this is how we deal with harmful gambling. First of all, your pitch is about your tax rate. And this is just insane. This is just insane. But we will just see who will actually get 3 more licenses, which will be handed out by no later than 2023. And what is so specific about those licenses is the licensees will need to start their business within a time span of 24 months after receiving the license, and then they will get the license 60 more months. So in the end, we are speaking about 7 years of fully licensed operations, and the licensee will also need, or are not just supposed to be, they must open up their operations to sports betting as well. And this just shows how possibly the overall landscape of the 9 actual sports betting licensees might change as the casino operators will join this race for the golden nugget as well.
Yeah, it's interesting dynamics. New York in general, every single week, there's discussions here, and just moving over to the online side of things. We mentioned here earlier the 51% tax rate for the New York State operators. There's also been raised the question here: how do you make sense of this 51% tax rate in the long run? Because it seems very difficult to find profitability, and very much the expectation here is, as we move forward, that there will be lobbying efforts starting effective immediately, essentially to lower the tax rate in order to continue this operation that we are seeing in New York as well. And so it's not impossible that in a year or 2 years' time that we'll start seeing this tax rate coming down as well. So just another little point as well. Nico, by the way, I must interrupt here and just say that I love the jacket you're wearing. You look perfectly diabolical here. It looks like you're plotting some type of like world domination here or whatever. But we have 2 more minutes here today, and I'd like to ask you if you have any more interesting short little moment to share here as well. I know that you have an interesting chart to present, by the way.
Sorry, I didn't get the last point.
I know that you have an interesting chart to display here this week again for us. Is that something you want to bring up? The New York map here that you have prepared.
Yeah. So the New York map, which we already have seen exactly. So this is the state of New York, and as you can see, blue highlighted. Seems to be very, very little is the downstate of New York. Thing is, what you see at the top is called the upstate of New York, representing roughly 7 million inhabitants, while the downstate of New York represents 12.5 million inhabitants. So although on a scale seems to be smaller than the upstate of New York, the downstate of New York, this is where the revenues are coming from. And that's why, in particular, these three licenses, which will be giving out by the New York Gaming Commission, are so so in the end so valuable, and that's what you could just see with the map. And thanks for pointing this out. Yeah.
Amazing. Nico, the time here it's 11. We're in CET. The hour is up, unfortunately, for this week's iGaming Next weekly news. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you here today again. It's a weird day in general. It's a weird week for all of us at the moment, and particularly yesterday here when the news of Ukraine came out, it was strange just going through the day. It's strange to go through the day today again. So just want to wish everyone who is in the region, not only in Ukraine, but surrounding areas as well, those who have families there, to hopefully stay as safe as possible. And Nico, to you as well. It's been great, of course, to spend this week with you here, this hour with you in the iGaming Next weekly chat. And I'd like to wish you a very nice weekend here under the circumstances, of course. And looking forward to follow up with you next week again. What do you say, Nico? Shall we go down to the beach and we'll have a little margarita together?
Yes, that's why I just got the jacket, as it's a little bit cold here in Malta, right? So as soon as it falls underneath 18 degrees, people in Malta start wearing the winter jackets. And I'd like to join you on a margarita. And as you already mentioned, it's we should just sometimes shouldn't take things for granted. And this is something which I always have to remind myself. It's when we started doing the clubhouse sessions, right? It was for me. It was doing a clubhouse session with Carolina and Pierre, right, and the audience. And it was like, it's a Swedish guy and a Polish born and raised girl. It's just Carolina and Pierre, and we should just focus on not letting these things change in any way, right? Getting rid of nationalities, getting rid of religion. Just see a person as the person approaches you, and as you value a person. Like it's Pierre, it's Carolina, it's Andreas, it's Bogdan. And no matter where they're coming from, no matter what they believe in, it's the person we should focus on. And as long as we can keep up with this, I'm pretty sure we are on a good track.
Absolutely, Nico. And for you, you are Nico with the perfect backslick. That's all I'm gonna impose on you. So, Nico, my friend, it's always a pleasure with you. I'll see you back here every Friday, 10 a.m. CET, for the next week's iGaming industry update here from iGaming Next. So, wish you a great weekend and take care of each other. For those of you guys who listen in all the way until now, thank you for the patience. You are world champions in sticking with us here, so you should have kudos for that as well. And a great weekend to everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.